Welcome to the Gaggle, where we bring you inside the newsroom to talk politics beyond what's in print. This week, will we see a special session on gun control? And do you really care where your congressman lives? But first, APS is putting on a full court press against a ballot initiative that would mandate renewable energy mandates. Ryan, what is up with all this money that APS is pouring into this ballot initiative?
Well, the initiative would require utilities like APS and Tucson Electric to get half of their energy from renewable sources like solar and wind by 2030. APS says that this would raise electricity bills, and really their main point of contention is that there's no flexibility. So the Corporation Commission already requires them to use some amount of renewable energy. They're considering requiring more. But if the CorpCom requires this, there's some flexibility, there's give and take. You know, APS can say, hey, this is really working and this isn't. If voters approve this ballot initiative, there's no flexibility. It would be 50% by 2030, and the regulators and the legislature couldn't come in and save APS or amend it in any way. And that, I think, is really why they're spending, it appears, about $5 million so far on political action committees to oppose this ballot measure.
It's quite a bit of money, and it should not be lost on anyone that this is a crowd, an opposition force that is trying to cast Tom Steyer, who's a billionaire political activist, as a boogeyman in this fight. They are using the same talking points that Democrats use against the Koch brothers when they come into town and spend a lot of money. What does this opposition campaign look like from APS's side?
Well, it's multifaceted. So yes, there's the advertisements against Mr. Steyer, you know, saying that he's got a secret, he earned money off of fossil fuels, and he's basically a bad guy and we shouldn't do what he wants. They're also challenging the signatures that they need to collect. They need to get about 226,000 signatures to put this on the ballot in November. So they're working every angle there to try and challenge who's gathering the signatures. They filed the complaint that said they had too many signature gatherers. Now they're saying that some of those people might have criminal backgrounds. There's, of course, the advertising. I saw some election-type posters posted along Washington Street on my way in this morning. They're advertising on Facebook and Twitter. They're getting all the chambers of commerce across the state to, you know, oppose the measure, and then they'll tweet that out, and then they kind of have this echo chamber where 100 different APS employees or Pinnacle West employees will then retweet that out. So it's on a bunch of different levels where they're just trying to get public opposition to this ballot measure.
We'll be following your reporting. Ron, you had a fascinating story, I would call it. I don't know that Representative Gosar would agree, but it's about our congressman from up north. He doesn't live in the district that he represents, and he took a tax break on a house that is outside of his district. What was his response to this?
I don't know. We're still waiting for it. Paul Gosar has lived in Flagstaff for many years and has a house there with his wife, but he also keeps an apartment in Prescott where he has essentially a presence so that it's inside the district that he is actually representing these days. And he has not commented about this now. We asked him for many days to weigh in on this and has not done so. He receives a tax break in Flagstaff for a primary residence. He also is registered to vote in Yavapai County for the Prescott address. His wife is in Coconino County voting, so she's not voting for Paul Gosar. But apart from all the inconvenience and the snickering that it might invite, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing says that you have to live in your district. This is for voters to sort out. Paul Gosar is in a very safe Republican district and has been in that district now for 3 terms, and unless Republican voters decide to change their minds in a hurry, probably he gets another term.
Do people care?
We'll find out. I don't suspect they care a lot, but it's probably not something that they're real proud of either.
Well, one issue a lot of people care about is the gun issue and school safety. And Democrats, in the wake of the shooting in Texas, Santa Fe, are calling for a special session, are calling for the governor and Republican lawmakers to take this issue up and to enact some sort of gun control measures that could prevent similar mass killings here in Arizona Is there a chance that we might see something move on this?
Yeah, I think there actually is. You know, let's not forget, just a couple weeks ago, the governor was pushing a bill in the legislature that would lead to some gun control laws. You know, he had Republican support for that. And some Republican support for that. That ultimately failed on the last day of the legislature. But, you know, the governor's office has said they're open to that idea of a special session.
So why did his bill, I mean, this was he came out with this, you know, big rollout with what he'd like this school safety plan to look like. It was met with, you know, some applause, I guess, by Republicans. Democrats didn't like it because they said it didn't go far enough. Why couldn't they find common ground to at least pass some of these provisions, especially on the mental health side?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats just felt like this was a very toothless bill. For starters, it didn't require universal background checks on gun sales. You know, that's basically a non-starter for them if the package doesn't include that. You know, and there was also opposition on the right. You had some conservative lawmakers who were concerned about a piece of the bill that was basically creating a new restraining order to take guns away from people that might be a danger to themselves or others. So you had concerns on both sides of the aisle. But ultimately, I think this was one of the many items that kind of died in the fight over Red for Ed. You know, Republicans had quite a few high-profile bills that they were pushing. Ducey was also interested in water policy reform. Those things just failed on the final stretch as, you know, teachers stormed the Capitol and the debate over teacher raises kind of overwhelmed everything.
All right, well, we'll see if we do indeed have a special session. Ryan, who you got beef with this week? Who hasn't called you back or given you some records?
Well, we made a request to speak with Mr. Steyer. He's spending at least $1 million so far and likely a lot more to push this ballot initiative in Arizona. And we'd like to sit down and talk to him about it and why he thinks Arizona is an important place to push this initiative. And haven't gotten a response from him yet, so I'm hoping maybe in the next week we hear from his camp.
Call us.
Paul Gosar and Ryan actually had reached out to Paul Gosar as well and had not heard from him. So public servant, public accountability, how about pick up the phone?
We'd like that. And Dustin?
I have a little bit of tea on a bill that died during the session. There was a bill to create a monument to the Mormon pioneers that helped settle a lot of the eastern parts of the state. No one could really figure out why this bill died at the end of the legislative session. It seems fairly uncontroversial. It turns out this got caught up in a primary fight between Senator Sylvia Allen and Representative Brenda Barton, who's challenging her in the Republican primary for a North Arizona Senate seat. Yeah.
Well, I still am waiting for records for about a year now from the Department of Administration. They have failed to pony up the underlying records tied to hundreds of workplace complaints that have been made by state officials. We still would like to see those. Thank you for joining us at the Gaggle. We will see you next week.